Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is Burning Questions. The topic that set the internet on fire this week is, of course, how did Ukraine pull off all of these major victories and major operations in 1 week? And what does that mean for the future of the war? And talking to us today and helping us make sense of it is Caolan Robertson.
My name's Caolan, and I've been a reporter here in Ukraine for a year now, and I focus on disinformation about Ukraine and on-the-ground reporting.
Yeah, and a lot of other very, very social media savvy things that bring a lot of attention onto this country. And recently, I love how I'm the the PR manager for this for the moment. But you did confront a Croatian, very pro-Russian politician recently, and you have done an array of documentaries that highlighted a lot of things about Ukraine, specifically drone usage from Russia and human safaris. So I think you're a little more than just a reporter here that has been here for a year, but it's my humble opinion. Anyways, Caolan is in Odesa right now, and he is at the site of the Black Sea Fleet that is literally underwater, which makes the Black Sea Fleet a very fitting, name. And I guess today we're going to talk a little bit about the absolutely, and I'm going to curse here, batshit awesome week that Ukraine has had on the world stage, starting with the Operation Spiderweb.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's what was quite relevant now about being in Odesa. And I didn't arrive here specifically to talk about this, but the fact that a third of Russia's warplanes, basically, have been taken out overnight by Ukrainian-made drones made me think back to 2022, when a third of Putin's prized ships, his prized Black Sea Fleet, have become coral reefs, literally just in the ocean behind me. And it's fitting. And all this didn't start on Sunday. Again, it started 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, when Ukraine started using insane amounts of innovation and just skill to figure out how to fight this war themselves. And this is actually extremely relevant as well, because if we think back to what happened in 2022, when Elon Musk basically turned off Starlink and almost sabotaged the Ukrainian operations here in the Black Sea. The Ukrainians basically figured out their own way to do this with Ukrainian-made drones and did it in spite of basically what Musk was doing. And that's kind of what happened on Sunday. There has been so many shackles on Ukraine for so long, so many sort of shackles on what weapons they can use and how far they can shoot them. And Sunday was entirely homegrown, homeborn. Okay, if you're not going to let us do something, then we're going to figure it out ourselves. And so the dynamics are still very, very similar. It's just not Elon Musk shutting it down. It was Donald Trump putting the shackles on. So it feels really, really relevant. But I guess I was also here because I wanted to talk about Odesa and the fact that the Russians love Odesa so much. They want it as their crown jewel. They're obsessed with Odesa. Whenever I talk about Odesa, they go absolutely ballistic, because this is a city that Russia could never build. This is a city that's genuinely multicultural. It has Armenian influence. The architecture is Italian and Greek. It's absolutely stunning, and it's timeless. And there's nothing like this in Russia. And if Russia can't build something, then they'll try and steal it. And this is why they want this city so much. And I was doing a video today in the opera house, the beautiful opera house, Viennese-designed opera house in Odesa. And there's a box in there. It's the Imperial Tsar box. And Putin has had his admiration for that box before. He thought that he would be sitting in that box watching the ballet right now if his 3-day operation worked. Whereas instead, he's watching his ship sink in the Black Sea of Odesa. So it's kind of fitting, but it's pretty relevant to the whole thing with what Odesa is right now.
It's very ironic. Well, Russia does consider Odesa its crown jewel because they, according to their revisionist history, believe that Catherine the Great built up Odesa. I personally don't think she was that great, so I'm just going to call her Catherine II, which is what she is. She is one of the biggest Russian history revisionists, along with Peter I, also the Great, but I don't consider him that, so we're going to stay away from that name. They both of them kind of like rewrote history. Well, not kind of. They majorly rewrote history to make Kyiv and Rus heritage apply to Russia. So Odesa is a very big part of their revisionist history and their narrative working. Russia does consider it to be like one of the most important cities for them because, again, if if Odesa wasn't built by Catherine II, if Odesa wasn't their like big pillage of culture and civilization, then their narrative falls apart. Their sort of Kyiv Rus heritage narrative falls apart. Odesa was built way before Russians ever discovered it. They just, as per usual, broke in, renamed a city, and decided to settle there and either deport or kill the native population. Except for Odesa, it was a little harder because the people here just kind of stayed and carried on as they were.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been looking into in the last few days as well, is just the history that this city is steeped in as well. And how just because the Russians broke in and put a few Soviet flags up for a few years doesn't mean it has anything to do with its history here. I mean, there is nothing like this in Russia as well. And some people might turn around and say, well, actually in St. Petersburg, some of the buildings look a bit like sort of European and this and this. And that is because Russians brought in European architects to build the only buildings in Russia that look in any way similar to what's in Odesa, because they're not capable of creating anything like this city. And it's thrived before and after Russia, and it always will. And I think it's nice to be here as well. I'm going to do a video right now about how they will never take this city. They're taking tiny, tiny, tiny centimeters in the east, and they couldn't even take back their own land in Kursk for 8 months. So the idea they'll get anywhere near the city is ludicrous. But what they're going to do instead is they're going to just try and terrorize it every night. I mean, the last 2-3 nights I've been here, there's just been constant drone attacks all over the city. One flew straight past my apartment. Because if the Russians can't have something, then no one can, they'll destroy it. And that's why this morning, I don't know if you saw this, but they put a giant, giant cab into the administrative building in Kherson, right in the town square, and took out like the middle of the whole building. I know that building really well. It was really famous on Liberation Day when everyone was celebrating in front of it. And it's an iconic symbol of the town square of Kherson. And the Russians just completely destroyed it this morning because if they can't have something, then no one can have it. Oh, and they'll just try and wipe it off the map. And it's so horrible to see, but it's also to show civilians that are living there, the tiny number of people that are left, that to give them the idea that the Russians are still in charge, that they're still mighty, because they look at their town hall, they look at their square, and they see giant holes and holes and everything. So that's super sad as well. But they're going to continue doing this because they can't have it. They can't have Kherson and they can't have Odesa. And the Russians will never have this city, and it's what drives them completely insane.
I think for the sake of clarifying something before people can get confused about a cab in the middle of the city, it's cluster munitions basically, or like glide bombs. So I just wanted to clarify that before some people who are unaware of Russian weapons think that there was just a massive London cab that somehow made it into the square. Into the center of the city.
They drove a cab.
Yeah, and we're freaking out about it. No, those are cluster munitions. They're weapons of mass destruction, and they're incredibly damaging, and they do result in a lot of very heavy damage. Also, there is a lot of shrapnel. They like to pack them with shrapnel before they send them in, so as to cause the most amount of damage, and it does do a lot of that. I actually, speaking of Russians and the mass amount of damage, this morning received a text from my father being like, please stay away from bridges and mass gatherings. And I was like, okay, is there any sort of rhyme or reason to this request, or is this just you freaking out? And he was saying that there have been certain like internal channels basically saying that obviously we're all expecting Putin to retaliate for spiderweb and for the Kerch Bridge, and that he might either launch something big like Oreshnik, which we have, now been waiting for, won't they, for like a week, I guess. And they might do some sabotage with the bridges, and obviously Kyiv is one of the main targets. And I'm just like, I love life near Russia. Not only do I have to think about my nights where will there be an Oreshnik launch? Won't there be an Oreshnik launch? Can I go to sleep tonight? Am I going to be woken up every hour? Now I also need to avoid bridges. Amazing. Fantastic. This is great. Speaking of bridges...
Yeah, and it's super...
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I guess you're about to go on to the Kerch Bridge. Yeah, I was just about to bring up the same thing, but... yeah.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just saying, speaking of bridges, I mean, it looks like the Kerch Bridge has been damaged. It hasn't been completely annihilated, but the type of damage that can and has been done to that bridge can potentially mean that heavy loads will struggle to get across it. And heavy loads are what they're using the bridge for, right? They're not bringing tourists into Crimea from Russia anymore. They're bringing weapons in designed to kill civilians in Ukraine, which is why that bridge should be destroyed. It was an illegal bridge anyway. It should never have been built in the first place. And I already know what's going to happen as soon as Ukraine finally finishes that bridge off, which I imagine will happen quite soon. There's going to be endless accusations of war crimes. They destroyed a bridge. This is a civilian bridge. And it's so important to remember that, again, that bridge was illegally built. That bridge is a bridge to a country that does not belong to Russia. They should never be crossing that bridge. Crimea has nothing to do with Russia. And destroying it is saving thousands of lives because it's stopping weapons being brought in. I mean, the drones that were launched last night that went past my apartment building, the drones and missiles and Iskandirs that get shot, that hit the port behind me, are launched from Crimea. And so taking down that bridge is.
Well, but also one of the biggest points is that that bridge has always been used from the beginning of the full-scale invasion as the largest military transportation hub. And they did not close it for civilians because, of course, Russia denied at that point that there was a full-scale war going on to begin with. So it's not just, it's really not a civilian bridge. It's been used mostly for the military purposes. And the fact that there are civilians on it is, and that there was like that one death a year ago or 2 years ago during the previous strike is really the fault of Russia because they allow civilians to travel through a military infrastructure, primarily military infrastructure transportation bridge, which is something that Russia does purposely because they don't care about lives of their civilians or anyone really. I do think that, you know, there were a couple of people disappointed that the bridge wasn't finished off, and I think that Ukrainians probably weren't necessarily planning on finishing off the bridge. Like the aim was to cause as much damage as possible, and also I think the bigger part of this operation was really not to even cause the damage, but to show Russia that we can operate under their nose. I think it's to sow fear and panic and paranoia in them, because the day before that, there were these trucks, and Russia is now all up in panic examining all the trucks, right? And this was like ludicrous because it happened, it's surreal how it happened, right? There are these drivers who were unaware of what they were carrying. They were literally filming the videos, just standing there being like, look at the technology, oh my God, there are drones coming out of my vehicle. And it's kind of like a circus, right? And a circus that caused them a lot of damage, and it's a spit in their face. And then as they're sitting at this negotiation table, literally the next day, the Ukrainians are blowing up the Kerch Bridge, which is like the bridge that has feasibly, reasonably, the most security in the world attached to a bridge, right? And Ukrainians still managed to put explosives onto it underwater and still managed to blow it up. I think it was more of like a show of, oh, you can't catch us and we can operate under your nose without you noticing. I think it was mostly done for paranoia purposes and to show that with what little we have, we can really cause some damage.
Yeah, and it's something that will be felt all across Russian society as well. It won't just be paranoia within the military and the top government, which is why it's so successful. And it's why the logistical nightmares that have been carried out that you've just been talking about are also great. You know, there are highways all across Russia that are going to be completely blocked with trucks for the next few months. Trucks also carrying goods going to supermarkets that are going to perish. So locals in those areas are going to get more and more upset with the war, more and more annoyed about the war. And logistical nightmares are great for Russia because sowing that kind of level of disruption is the only way that this war can reach everyday people in Russia, just like it's reached every single civilian in Ukraine, because so many Russians are indifferent to this as well, because they don't know what's going on because of the propaganda, or they've had all of their 4G networks and 3G networks turned off because, you know, the drone attacks coming from Ukraine mean no one can communicate anything. But now they're seeing it hit every single corner of their country. And that's absolutely necessary. But it's nice because it is a reminder. It is a reminder to the government as well that Ukraine has a lot up its sleeve. And I think the key thing is this definitely isn't the end. The fact that Ukraine could pull this off on Sunday, the fact that the bridge was pulled off 48 hours later means this is just the beginning. There's so much more that I can imagine that's being planned, that's been put together. And the Russians know that as well. And it's great. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next. But this is a great strategy because the Russian strategy is an old Soviet rubbish mentality. It's getting heavy machinery across railway networks and firing it into civilian areas and just terrorizing the population. The Ukrainian strategy is incredibly strategic. I mean, what happened on Sunday was comparable to the Mossad pagers attack. The only way you were going to get killed by a pager is if you are someone that had that pager, which means you're a combatant, right? It was incredibly specific to military targets. And that's Ukraine's strategy. And it's the absolutely most humane, grown-up and smart way of fighting. And I think that's why Russia has also just said, and Putin's just said as well, we don't negotiate with terrorists anymore. We're not going to negotiate anymore with Ukraine, because I think they're absolutely terrified right now. Also, by the way, we don't negotiate with terrorists. The country that has committed terrorism every 15 minutes for the last 20 years.
They always, obviously, it's always projection. Well, there were two things that happened as a reaction to this operation that like were my favorite on Twitter. One of them is just plain funny, and I think it's a little stupid. Obviously, it comes from an American politician. And the other one, I'll start with this one, was my absolute favorite thing that I have seen on Twitter to date about this war, and it's a Russian mill blogger saying, "I'm starting to think that during World War II, all of the covert operations were planned by." He used a slur, chachly, so Ukrainians, because there is no way, because Russia keeps missing these operations, and I thought it was so funny. I was like, yes, for sure. Well, to educate you on history a little bit, Russian mill blogger, it was mostly Ukrainians fighting the World War II on the USSR side, because we were thrown to the front lines, and it was mostly Ukraine that was completely destroyed by both the Nazis and the Soviets. So it's feasible to think that most of the covert operations that were successful were definitely planned by us, not by you. And then the second thing was Blumenthal, a senator in America, who is actually very pro-Ukrainian, so I feel so bad at criticizing him, but he compared the Operation Spiderweb to America's operation to take down bin Laden. And I'm like, okay, so you're comparing, I understand that it was probably done so that Americans can understand the gravity, but also here, it's kind of not comparable because America is one of the world's largest military superpowers going into the allied nation's country to disable a terrorist with all the military might that they have and the connections they have versus Ukraine going into the territory of a non-allied military superpower that is currently trying to literally erase us from the face of the planet is just a little different. It might be just me, but I really don't see the connection here.
Well, this has been put out by so many Americans as well, and it's actually, I think a lot of it comes from a Kremlin conspiracy that this was a NATO operation, that it was actually much bigger than Ukraine, because obviously so much of Russia, so much of MAGA don't think that Ukraine is still strong. So they're not capable of thinking that Ukraine can carry something like this out. So this is why you had Alex Jones screaming and crying and having a panic attack and a mental breakdown, because Ukraine targeted a military site in Russia, which is devastating for Alex. But also because the Kremlin line is that it was NATO, right? It was NATO that planned it. It was NATO that carried it all out. And Russia started that lie because they hate NATO, right? And they want Trump to pull out of it. But that's also why you had them all going on about it being like Pearl Harbor. I originally retweeted something saying it was like Pearl Harbor, but only from the perspective of unexpected and massive damage. But they called it Pearl Harbor as if it was a sort of an unprovoked attack. But this is what they think. They think this is an unprovoked attack and it's an escalation. Because every single day that Russia puts weapons into Ukraine, it's fine. And if Ukraine fights back about destroying the planes that send those weapons, oh my gosh, you're going to start a war. This is a disaster. This is total escalation. What are you guys doing? So it's these guys would not be happy if Ukraine fought back, even on the front lines. But it all just comes out of Russia and the Kremlin. And,
I've been seeing so many comments being like, no, you can't say that Ukraine wants peace because Ukraine attacked. It's like, no, we didn't attack. This is a defense strategy. Also, for some reason, none of you have any issue with Russia literally downpouring missiles on Ukraine every day. But if Ukraine, that meme, God forbid girl has a hobby or something. It's like, God forbid Ukraine pulls off a successful defense. Now suddenly we're the enemy. But also, if if people really need to like draw a parallel to something, this is the most comparable to a Trojan horse, right? Because it's kind of like these trucks that were transporting. Also, how on earth did no one think it was weird? There were all of these trucks hired to transport specialty wooden boxes. Like their cargo was specialty wooden boxes. Like for what?
And do you see the videos of them where it's like they look suspicious? Like there's like a door on the back of them. It's like sealed shut. There's like a strange window on the top.
Yeah.
It's like, did no one in Russia just think, shall we have a look in here? Or shall we?
Yeah, I mean,
oh my
it's
gosh,
just
but
so
I mean, it's, yeah.
Just like empty wooden boxes that wouldn't fit a human are kind of weird for a pet, too small to build a house from, but have windows and doors. Yeah, it was kind of like absurd. I think the fact that this was pulled off the way that it was obviously Ukraine did a brilliant job, but also it just shows how kind of dumb Russia is, because really, I mean, that would raise a 5-alarm fire in my head if I saw a bunch of trucks in very different regions of Russia transporting specialty wooden boxes for no reason.
But these are people who put car tires on airplanes to protect the airplanes. Like this is the same country, which is which I mean, I think it was a good strategy because it helps them burn the planes very well, which is quite nice, having like a blanket of rubber.
Yeah.
But it was the locals filming the drones, leaving the trucks in amazement at the technology. Wow, look at this. There's like a truck that sends off the drones. I mean, these are locals that live within a mile of the fucking military airfield. So
And I also,
like, oh, and they're going that way. Wow, that's amazing.
I also absolutely loved it when like stuff started burning and there were explosions and they still didn't realize that this was a hostile attack. This wasn't like Russia's technology might showing. It was hilarious. The truck drivers, there were truck drivers that went to pee, I suppose, after they parked, who were filming their trucks, and they were like, "What is this? There's a drone coming out of my truck. Oh my God. Modern technology. Why do we even have a job driving there? All of these unmanned aerial systems. Soon, the trucks are going to be driven by themselves." And I'm like, why are you so excited about it?
No, but this is why they weren't shocked when everything was on fire, because there's videos of Moscow's, like, have you seen the videos of like the sewage fountains that just explode in residential areas? And everyone's just filming them
yeah.
oh my gosh, look at this. It's like giant fountains, explosions going on, because it's already so deeply dysfunctional. They're filming military attacks with amazement, as if it's like just a funky quirk of their own country.
I mean, yeah, it's the same as
Did you see that? Yeah.
Russian teenagers were posing with, there was a drone attack on Russia and there were a couple of buildings that were destroyed around the military infrastructure, and Russian teenagers literally were coming there as like a sightseeing tour and taking pictures like this with the building burning in the background. I mean, okay.
I remember that.
Yeah.
They always get in trouble for this as well. Did you see that there was a soldier who filmed the burning airfield just behind him as well, and he was like, "Gosh, look at this. This is not very good. This is quite annoying." And state TV spent about an hour calling for him to be executed for filming this as well. It's the most dysfunctional place on earth. Like the reason that Kursk even happened was because Putin had given like $300 million to have that area of the Sumy border refortified properly. And the amount of corruption that took place, by the time that 300 million reached Moscow to Kursk, it ended up with just some guy with a shovel digging like a little trench or something. So it's always quite fun to see this. It's always a pleasure because I think this won't be the last thing. There's going to be a lot more stuff like this that the Ukrainians definitely have.
Honestly, this week, it's like the first week since probably the liberation of Kherson and Kharkiv that I'm like excited to look at the news, because I've been opening my phone to like first Operation Spiderweb, then Crimea Bridge on fire, then there was the hack into the Russian aircraft manufacturer that's comparable to hacking into like Rheinmetall or something. Then later today, I saw that Ukraine targeted and successfully disabled 3 Iskander launchers. In a
Oh, really? I didn't know this.
Yeah, I will actually here. I have it saved because I was just talking about it. Iskander missile launchers hit. Ukrainian armed forces, in coordination with the security service of Ukraine and other defense units, struck a concentration area of Russian missile forces. A unit of Russia's 26th Missile Brigade, operating near Klintsy in the Bryansk region, had attempted to launch missiles, likely at Kyiv. Thanks to timely reconnaissance and coordinated action, the Ukrainian strike was successful. One Russian missile launcher detonated and 2 others were likely very damaged. Losses are being assessed. No civilian casualties were reported.
They're not even going to be able to do a retaliation. I mean, I was expecting the retaliation to happen last night. But they were probably just like...
I've been expecting the retaliation for last night, the night before that, the night before that, the night before that. I was actually looking after my partner's dog because he was away on assignment, and I was kind of like graveling between my apartment and his apartment to walk my dogs and his dogs, and then like the night was coming, and I was like, oh my God, they're gonna probably launch like a retaliatory strike. I don't want to leave this dog alone. I don't want to leave my dogs alone. I was like in such chaos trying to figure this out. Figured it out, then was like sitting in bed waiting for this to happen, and then I slept till like 8 in the morning. There was not a single alarm, and I was just like, this is the most peaceful night I've had in Ukraine since I moved here, and I don't, no computing, no computing is happening.
Yeah, me too. I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, we're still here. What's going on?
I think they don't
No,
have...
but I mean, it's probably... The sabotage has probably really disrupted even a retaliation, because now no one trusts each other. The amount of distrust within their own government, they will accuse each other of doing of these kind of sabotage attacks as well. They're completely dysfunctional. The fact that these Iskanders have been self-destructed means they're probably going to have to retest all their own systems, maybe put in new systems to protect them from that, and they need these Iskanders, to put into children's hospitals. These are so important. They need these right now for the retaliation. That'll probably really mess the whole thing up. Gosh, it's a really interesting time.
It is a very interesting time, and I do think that we're not done. I feel like there's still going to be stuff happening, but the interesting thing about this is, right, like, A, how Ukraine is able to pull this off, B, how Russia is literally on the verge of probably a mental breakdown in a sense. There was this bit of news that Russians were circulating, which was obviously a fake, but it's funny because it shows the state of their mind. They were circulating a fake that Putin had a heart attack after he had found out the amount of damage and destruction, and they were trying to show his patriotism, that he had a heart attack, because of all of the military damage and stuff.
What?
Yeah, and I found it so funny. This was like a fake that was circulating on Russian Telegram. And I find it so funny because it does show their mental state, where they're kind of like in a state of a heart attack and panic attack. But also, the more we find out about losses at those airfields, the more devastating they are. There is an AWACS that was destroyed, which is like a radar plane that informs you about incoming missiles and helps guide outcoming missiles. It's like a big system. Australia donated one of those to Ukraine like a year ago. And from what I've been like reading online, the issue with the 30% of Russia's fleet being destroyed is that people are like, okay, well, they still have 70% of their fleet. No, well, Ukraine destroyed functional aircraft. A lot of the aircraft is not functional, and it's not ready for combat. A lot of it needs to be maintained because it's been overused, so it's actually not. It's not something you can get up in the air and use. And it takes 8 to 12 months to repair an aircraft like that. So they're stuck with a lot of like dead stock of aircraft that aren't working. And also, and this is just my assumption, but wouldn't the tarmacs at those airfields also be damaged because of the drone attacks? Like, I doubt that a plane explodes and there's, everything is good and jolly around it. So there is definitely a lot of logistical nightmare happening there.
And and I mean, those planes as well are not repairable. And the production line that was put into place to actually make those. Oh, sorry, there's a huge echo. Is my sound still okay?
Yeah, your sound is okay.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know if there was something. So I didn't know if there was something wrong with my sound. The production line that exists to actually create those planes no longer exists. They were designed in the 50s and they're Soviet era, so they don't exist anymore. Sorry, there's like a massive delay and echo. I don't know if I need to change this up. I can hear myself really loud. Let me mute it. I'll mute it. Test? Okay, it's gone. Is it okay to cut this? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. Thanks, sorry. Yes, but the production line that actually was made to create these planes no longer exists. That was 1950s Soviet-era planes. And the parts to actually create them would be basically impossible nowadays. So they're completely irreparable. And they were on the runway, which means they were ready, like you said. So it's probably set them back like a whole year. And they don't have anything else. They're not making other planes like this. So the only thing they really have are the stuff in the silos, the things like the Oreshniks, and the last two launches failed, and the one before that blew up in the silo, which I would have loved to hear that conversation as well, being like, Putin, the Oreshnik, it exploded. And he'll be like, well, yeah, that's what it's supposed to do. They'll be like, no, in the silo.
At launch.
Be like, okay.
Yeah.
So those are very dysfunctional as well.
I mean, the best part about the whole, like, not being able to repair aircraft and the production lines not being there is also that Ukraine recently, as we just said, hacked into the data of the Russian biggest aircraft manufacturer, which means they have all the blueprints, all the plans, all the connections to the government, all of their production line, the names of all of the employees, the connection of those employees to FSB, like their addresses, like literally date of birth, like everything. You could do a whole zodiac chart of that and more. And so now I think they're going to have a very hard time repairing those aircraft, provided that Ukraine likely screwed with their operations as well and with their plans and with the, with the data that they had on how to repair them and stuff. So it's just been like, it's been a really sort of like a very two sides of a different extreme mood in these two countries. I think Russia is having a hell of a week and Ukraine is having a hell of a week. It's one of those.
Yeah, it's amazing to see.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see more. Well, I guess what are your, before we go, what are your predictions? Like, what do you think is going to be the next move? Just like ballpark, type of first thing that pops into your head.
I probably think more airfields, because there are airfields further away that have planes on the tarmacs. And that is all Russia really has, is to put these massive missiles launched from planes and the glide bombs launched from planes. And they exist in Crimea as well, so probably just more of that. But it's so unpredictable. I had no idea that anything like Sunday was coming up. So I don't know, what do you think?
I do think that there is either going to be some more airfields or they're going to be the next, it's kind of like the different, there is the earth, there is the land, there is the air, there is the sea. So I think maybe something with the submarines or something with the remainder of the great royal fleet they had, emphasis on had. But I do think that this summer in general is going to be, what I describe as a hot girl summer for Ukraine in a sense.
That would be a nice one, yeah, because we had part one, yeah, which was and then it's the sea and then the sky. So it'll be like a nice trilogy, a nice perfect trilogy to watch that. Yeah, that's nice.
I just really hope that the trend of me doing reports and then going home and 2 hours later being like, oh, they set this on fire continues, because that's what happened I think it was on Tuesday. I was reporting, I was talking about the Operation Spiderweb and like kind of dissecting everything that happened. And then I just recorded, I'm in my car, I'm driving home, and there is like, Crimea Bridge has been blown up. And I'm like, great. I wish I had known that an hour later, an hour earlier. But hey, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I always love having you on this channel, and I do hope that you return more frequently because, in my humble opinion, and also apparently of a lot of people that watch this, we have a really good dynamic going. So,
we do. I remember the last time we did this; it was great. Yeah, we should do more, and I'll find more exotic locations. I think you're right. Maybe me with a snorkel underwater for the next one.
I think
I'll
I think next one you should do from underwater, like maybe in a submarine, or maybe like snorkeling or scuba diving. Yeah, I fully expect that to be the next rapport when I see you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you go have a fantastic vacation / reporting from Odesa. It looks amazing. Actually, your videos inspired me to look for tickets to go to Odessa, so I'm planning a mini weekend getaway maybe next week. So yeah, go enjoy the weather in the city.
You have to come down. Yeah, it's the best place in the world.
Amazing. Well, go enjoy it. See you next time.
See you next time.
Ну, ми типу записали. Just one sec. Ми записали. Мені тільки треба буде підводку потім записати. Okay, well, I'll talk to you. Yeah, let's chat.
Yeah, well, if you're here next week, I might be here till the 16th, so we can hang out. I mean, it's like the most, I'm literally like in paradise right now.
Yeah, I might. I actually,
do it.
I wanted to do this weekend, but logistically it's not possible because my dog sitter quit and he got a real job. So I'm looking for a dog sitter. And, but next week I'm hoping that I'm going to find a solution, and I really want to come because I've been like looking at people. There's so many.
Use Audrey's. Audrey has a dog sitter in Kyiv. That's quite good.
Oh, okay.
I'll send you her number.
Yeah, I'm gonna. That would be great. I'm gonna check too. I was gonna ask in my building and stuff because a lot of people don't want to look after 2 dogs because it's a lot of dogs. But like, I mean, they're small dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it's not like it's kind of like looking after one normal-sized dog.
No, come. Yeah, and if you do come down, let me know, and I'll. We can do some content or something. Yeah, cool.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
See you soon.
Well, I'll speak to you soon.
Speak soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I always enjoy having Caolan on this channel, and if you enjoy seeing him as much as I do, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, turn on all of your notifications, send this video to a friend, give it a like, and of course, give us your questions, suggestions, thoughts, constructive criticism, I don't know, anything you have on your mind down in the comments below, because we read all of it, we highly appreciate it, and we do love the back and forth communication. See ya!